Independent journalist Michael Schellenberger has been digging into the digital ID issue. He just released a lengthy piece on this on his Substack called Public. He joins us now with his thoughts. Michael, look, the argument is it's like it'll help thwart illegal immigration, ID fraud, streamline healthcare services. Sounds fantastic. What the heck's the problem?
Right. Hey, great to be with you, Laura. Yeah, I mean, another conspiracy theory that has started coming true. I mean, we saw this announcement in September. It took everybody by surprise. The World Economic Forum had been pushing digital IDs, the United Nations, the European Union, Britain. Of course, the really terrifying example is China, which uses digital IDs and a social credit score to control speech and to control what people think and say online. I mean, it could come in a lot of different ways. They'll start voluntary, then they'll make it mandatory. They'll have rewards, and then they'll have punishments. It's quite terrifying. And when you just listen to what the advocates for digital IDs say, it's terrifying. And, you know, Laura, one thing I learned from this last round of investigations is that this is a huge cybersecurity threat. The idea that, I mean, imagine if you get hacked in one of the many websites that you log into. Imagine everything suddenly being hacked because it's all centralized in a single place. That cybersecurity threat alone ought to be enough to kill the digital ID. But again, this is potentially digital totalitarianism.
All been there before, rushing to get to the airport when you suddenly realize you forgot your passport. Well, Apple says it's got you covered. The company launching a new feature yesterday. It's called Digital ID. It's a way to carry a copy of your passport on your iPhone or Apple Watch. The ID is then stored in your Apple Wallet. Now, right now, digital ID can be used at TSA checkpoints at more than 250 U.S. airports, with more coming later. However, very important to note here, it does not replace a physical passport and cannot be used for international travel or border crossings.
Next time you need to present your passport at the airport, you can just pull out your iPhone. Apple is rolling out its new Digital ID feature. It allows users to add their passport information to their Apple Wallet. TSA checkpoints at more than 250 airports nationwide will accept it as a form of ID for domestic travel. It will also be accessible on Apple Watch devices. The digital ID will not be accepted for international travel.
Well, iPhone users, you have a new way to show your ID at all U.S. or most U.S. airports, that is. A digital ID in Apple Wallet is now being tested at TSA checkpoints at more than 250 airports in the U.S. Now, Apple says you can create the ID using your valid U.S. passport. It works even if you don't have a real ID compliant driver's license or state ID. Digital ID does not replace a physical passport, however, and it cannot be used for international travel and border crossings. I'll be right back.
These boots are made for adventures in the wild and for surviving the hard work. Buy them now and thank me later.
Certainly. So this is something that Apple fans have been asking for quite some time, and that is to have true digital ID stored on the Apple iPhone within the wallet, also having it work, on the Apple Watch. And Apple's finally doing it. Now, it's something that Google has done as well in the Google Wallet. So Samsung users, Android users have been able to have some of this functionality for quite some time. Apple had been lagging in this, but they have finally added it, and it is working with a handful of states. I'm sorry to say Illinois is not one of them. Neither is Florida, from where I'm speaking to you from. But one of the things you can do with it, which is good for everyone, is your U.S. passport. It is workable with the Apple Digital ID. So you go into the Apple Wallet, you add as if you were adding a card, and it gives you an option to add an ID card and select the one you want to add. If you want to add your U.S. passport, if you want to add one of the IDs, driver licenses or non-driver IDs from one of the states that is listed, you go ahead and do it. I added my passport just last night to my brand new, by the way, Apple iPhone 17 Pro Max, and it worked pretty well. What you do is you end up taking a picture of the picture card of the ID, the front page of the in this case the passport. It'll ask you for some extra photos of yourself, so it can verify that it is in fact you. And then after a few moments, it does that, and now your ID is stored in your Apple Wallet. So if I were to go take a flight up to see you in Chicago, and I were going through TSA, I wouldn't have to get out my license or my passport. I could just tap my phone at TSA, and that would verify my identity. Now, it only works domestically. You can't use it for flying internationally yet, and you can't use it in any kind of land crossing for international borders. So if you're driving up to Canada or you're driving down to Mexico, you can't use it at the border. But for flying domestically, this is an option for you.
So Apple says that this is going to be encrypted, meaning that they wouldn't be able to see when you displayed your ID or the data that you presented. But obviously there is the question of who could crack that code and see things that you wouldn't want them to see.
Well, that is always a risk, and you have to think about what is associated with the type of ID that you're storing in the phone, right? If it's your driver license, or it's your passport, that's usually not tied too much to things like financial information or anything else. It may have your address, of course. I mean, that's always a thing. And there will always be a risk with technology that sometimes it can be breached, it can be ruptured. But Apple is known for its pretty robust security and its way of randomizing and anonymizing things in those data transfers. So there's a high degree of security. There's a high degree of belief in that security. And so there's a lot of confidence that you can do this safely. Of course, if you don't want to, you don't have to. No one's pushing you into digital ID. If you want to continue to bring out your actual ID card, that's fine. In fact, you can't get rid of your actual ID. The digital ID does not replace the license or the passport. You still have to have that with you, but you can leave it in your pocket. You can leave it in your pocketbook or your purse. You don't have to go grab it, especially in that security line. Chances are your phone is in your hand anyway, right? So that just makes things a bit more easy for you going through the TSA line.
Yeah, and very clearly, I mean, you said you have the 17. I think I'm working with like 11 or 13 here. But clearly, you embrace new technology very quickly as a tech reporter. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, it seems like you would have more of a generational shift too, like for our senior citizens or folks who just, it takes them a while to get on board. So it's good to hear that maybe this wouldn't be like an overall game changer, just something that if people who are techies would like to add to their repertoire, they can.
Certainly they can, and you don't really have to be a techie. I mean, if you are someone that uses your Apple Wallet to make payments at the store when you're buying your groceries or whatnot, you're using the same app in that case. So it's not anything different, really. If you have your debit card stored on there, you have a credit card stored on there, you use something along the lines of like Apple Cash, for instance, to make payments, it's already there. So you have some experience with this app or these types of apps anyway. Again, if you're a Samsung and an Android user, you already have this kind of familiarity as well by using that to make your payments at the store. So this is just something else that you can use that app for. In this case, it's your ID as opposed to your payment card. And for, I think, a lot of people, there's going to be some very quick and easy adaptation to this. Like I said, Apple fans have been clamoring for this for quite some time. So I suspect a lot of people will take advantage of this rather quickly.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the Android, so it would be the same for Android users.
Certainly. I mean, Android is a Google product. There's the Google Wallet. It has the capability for handling IDs like passports and, again, some state-issued IDs like driver licenses, depending upon the state. So if you are already familiar with that, adding this to that is not going to be any really different, I think, to you. I think you're going to have a pretty easy time adapting. But again, the Android users have been doing this for a while. Apple is sort of catching up here. But it's just the new way of doing things. We are moving further and further into the digital only space or digital focus space, and more people want this kind of stuff. They want to have all of their things in just that little small box that they're carrying, and that they can tap it or whatnot. And in some cases, they can even use a wearable, a watch, for instance. This has the Apple Wallet on it as well, and I can just pull up the ID and tap that instead of even bringing out my phone. My phone can stay in my wallet, it can stay in my bag, whatever the case is at TSA. I already use the watch to pay, like I said, for groceries. I'm checking out at the grocery store. I tap the watch to the little payment, the same thing where you would swipe a card and the payment goes through. It doesn't really have a problem. And I think more and more people are going to go with that. Yes, there's a slower adaptation of technology, I think, for older people because they're set in their ways and they may find some of this new stuff a little daunting.
Never ever sue the driver who crashed into you after a car accident. There's a better way to get compensated that's faster, easier, and could get you way more money without spending years in court or paying expensive lawyers up front. If you've been in a car accident within the past year, even if you were just a passenger, what I'm about to share could save you months of hassle and put tens or even hundreds of thousands more in your pocket. Here's what most people do.